Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls,
You're good. Just go right back and start again.
Good morning.
No.
What? Good morning and welcome to all those conscientious folks who remembered to set their clocks ahead on this daylight savings time morning. Welcome also to those who will be joining us later on YouTube because they did not. My colleague, Eric Kamenetsky, greets our gathering with these words. Welcome to this moment. It's the only one we have. However we may name the hour, it is in the present that we gather. I am grateful that you choose to spend it with us, because this moment is different when you are here. When you're here, it's better. When you're here, this becomes a moment of community, a moment in community. We all know it's been a challenging year, what with the pandemic and all the politics and the crazy weather. It's been a challenging year. Speaking of challenges, it's been a challenging year because we've had to figure out how to be together when we're apart. And we've had to stay apart in order to be together and stay well. And being apart itself has made it harder for all of us to be well. Nonetheless, we have carried on long enough and well enough to be here now, still together. So welcome to this moment. It is the only one we have. Let's embrace this moment and lift our hearts together in worship. And another colleague, Phyllis Hubble, asks, how do we measure a year? A song from the musical Rent notes that there are 525,600 minutes in 1 year. This past week, we marked 525,600 minutes since the COVID-19 shutdown entered our lives. since we last saw our grandchildren, our hairdressers, our favorite restaurants, our friends, since we went to the office or a birthday party, since we saw a live performance, since we had a hug. During that year, we've had over 545,544 deaths, more than one a minute. Yet those of us here this morning, like many others, have endured and survived. Here we are, together once again as a community on this morning. We light our chalice today to honor the loss and suffering of this year. All right. And to affirm the hope we hold in our hearts for better times to come, for more love, more beauty, more justice, and more joy in the 525,600 minutes that will mark the year we start this week. May we measure this year in light kindled, in hope renewed and nurtured, in love given and received. Let us now share in the chat where our flame is kindled this morning. Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
From the crush of wealth and power, something
This next video comes from the Unitarian Universalist Trauma Response Ministry, an organization which helps congregations build resilience after critical events, such as the onset and ongoing nature of the COVID-19 crisis. March 14th is the anniversary of our last in-person worship service at All Souls. And this is a good time to reflect on not only how the impact of this collective trauma has been felt and what we may have lost, but also how this time has inspired new ways of being inclusive, creative, and welcoming.
March 14th will mark the anniversary of the Unitarian Universalist Association's recommendation that congregations stop meeting in person due to the pandemic. Your congregation, like others across the country, experienced a dramatic shift, a critical incident when COVID-19 shutdown took effect, changing everything about how we worship, learn, socialize, and show compassion for each other and for our communities.
On a personal level, the pandemic may have affected how you live, work, exercise, interact with family and friends, how you celebrate milestones, and even how you shop and access healthcare.
You may have experienced a range of reactions and feelings, including grief related to the changes and losses you and your congregation have experienced.
We are the Unitarian Universalist Trauma Response Ministry, a national organization of clergy and lay volunteers. We help ministers, boards, religious educators, and congregations when things become challenging or overwhelming. And we are here today to help begin to put this past year into perspective.
Unlike many critical incidents, such as an unexpected death or property damage, this pandemic has been unsettling, disruptive, and ongoing. For some people, especially those with marginalized identities, it may also have been traumatic.
Our hope is that you can appreciate the resilience and coping skills you have developed over your lifetime. It may also be helpful to know that critical events and their aftermath have a predictable trajectory.
You may remember the first pre-disaster phase when news came out about a mysterious virus. It seemed like a faraway problem there was no need to worry about, until one day it became clear that COVID-19 was really dangerous. You may have felt worried and confused about next steps.
Mid-March last year, the UUA advised congregations to end in-person worship and programming, and the impact of the pandemic became real. A critical incident occurred that required you, your family, and the congregation to focus on survival. You or others may have experienced stress responses such as irritability, sweating, confusion, trouble sleeping, and time distortion.
Then came a heroic phase when people sewed masks, delivered hand sanitizers and groceries, created social pods, started in-home schooling and Zoom worship, and rang bells to celebrate healthcare workers. It was a high energy period, but our bodies cannot sustain that level of effort.
The third phase was predictable, disillusionment. We took inventory of how this virus affected, sometimes killed, people we know and love. There has been such isolation, financial loss, and sadness to see people fight for resources. It wouldn't be surprising if people found Zoom worship and programming lacking, leading people to lash out at the minister, Director of Religious Education, board, or musicians for not performing up to their expectations.
Many congregations and communities remain in the disillusionment phase. Frankly, it hurts. We all want things to be different. It's important to remember that many of us are experiencing compassion fatigue and burnout.
We urge you to hold on, have faith. A time will come when the pandemic will turn a corner. It will likely take many more months, but eventually it will be time to focus on a new beginning, a time of reconstruction.
You know how to work through change, loss, and grief. You've experienced shifts in your reality before, and you know deep down that someday this trying time will be a memory.
In the meantime, this anniversary may trigger emotional and physical responses. You may feel clumsy, or your thoughts may be muddled. You or others in your congregation may become intolerant or angry.
The coming of spring is a good time to reawaken a sense of compassion, to forgive each other, and to forgive ourselves. We can, as Reverend Robert Eller Isaacs says, begin again in love.
The UU Trauma Response Ministry is available to support your congregation if your minister or board deems it helpful. But we have faith that individually and collectively, you will make it through this pandemic. We encourage you to share our faith.
Good morning. My name is Russell Feldhausen. I'm a member of this church and currently serve as the Vice President of the Board of Trustees. This week, we are commemorating 1 year since the last time we were able to be together in person for our Sunday service. It is a bittersweet anniversary for many of us as we reflect on how much our lives have changed and all of the events we've missed over the past year. Thankfully, we may be starting to see the light at the end of the long tunnel. During the time we've been apart, our church community has continued to grow, learn, and adapt to the new operating environment. Some items that come to mind for me are the continually amazing Sunday services, including the unique opportunity we had to partner with other churches during the summer, our continuing Sunday Plus lunches, the virtual chili cook-off, and the continued success of our many social groups and outreach teams. We're still doing great work together, even if we are at a distance. Unfortunately, these times also present many challenges. For the second year in a row, we've been unable to hold our annual auction, a major fundraiser that helps fill the gap in our budget each year. The pandemic has made it difficult for groups to meet in person, and because of that, the income from our rentals has been significantly reduced. Thankfully, through the hard work of our staff, volunteers, and the board, as well as the support of our members, we've been able to maintain our funding and continue to do all of these wonderful things. Just like we've all come to realize the importance of having a home that keeps us safe and comfortable during this pandemic, I feel like many of us have realized the importance of a spiritual home like All Souls to keep us energized and together, virtually, if not in person. Your support is what allows this church to continue to grow and change, and there are several ways that you can help. If you have a pledge on record, please make sure it is accurate and updated if needed. If you give regularly or would like to, having a pledge on record with us helps us build our annual budget and plan for the future. Both of these steps are easier than ever with our new online system. You might even say it's a breeze. You can find the link to add or update your pledge in the March newsletter, or feel free to contact the church or the board if you need assistance. And, of course, you can give to these Sunday collections that help support the All Souls General Fund. So today, join me in celebrating our virtual, spiritual home at All Souls with your generous support, in the hope that we'll be able to get together in person again soon. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. To heal the sin-sick soul.
Let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live.
Lent by Bruce T. Marshall. The season of Lent takes place on the Christian calendar for 40 days before Easter. Lent does not exactly catch the popular fancy. Lent is defined as a time of fasting and penitence in preparation for Easter. In this day and age, both fasting and penitence may seem peculiar, and yet during this season of Lent, when the earth is still barren from winter and our lives too may seem on hold, waiting for a miracle. It's a time when I become deeply aware of the sufferings in the congregation, the community, the world. On any given day, we all look pretty much all right, but beneath the appearances, many struggle. It's a time when I revisit old sorrows I may have caused others, old memories that hide from summer's sun and spring's brilliant colors and the excitement of fall activities. These make themselves known during this fallow time of the year. It's a time when doing without seems the appropriate way to nourish our spirituality. As the earth still is doing without, as we reach the end of our store of energy and spirit that was gathered and packed away during the harvest. Now we do without and await a word of hope, the promise of a future. Religious liberals sometimes are accused of wanting Easter without Lent or Good Friday. Given our attitude of hope and affirmation, we may be tempted to skip past the struggles that give birth to new life. But I've not found that to be true. Suffering and struggle come to us, whether there's room in our theology for it or not. The faith that speaks to this experience is not specifically Christian, but universal. That there may be meaning in our struggles, that we may be transformed in our suffering, that Easter awaits beyond the barrenness of this season of Lent.
One year ago this week, on the Ides of March, we held our last in-person Sunday morning service in Bragg Auditorium. Some congregations had already made the decision to close their buildings, and this was their first virtual service. We did not know then nearly as much as we do now about the novel coronavirus, and we did not know what to anticipate might lie ahead. Most of us envisioned a period of weeks, perhaps a few months of protective distancing until things got straightened out. We had generally lost the habit of trusting government for either accurate information or helpful action by that point, and nothing that happened in the early days or weeks of the pandemic served to challenge that expectation. By 2 months later, in mid-May, we knew enough more to deepen our alarm and to move the UUA to recommend that all our congregations plan for no in-person activities until May of this year at the earliest. It felt like a slow-motion natural catastrophe, a tornado or tsunami or volcano that unfolded not in hours of terror, but in week after week of confusion, uncertainty, and mounting agitation. I will be forever grateful to the board, the staff, and the volunteer leadership of this congregation for the spirit of cooperation and improvisation with which they undertook to hold our community together during this crisis, so that we might all stay as safe as possible, so as to still be present when the time comes to resume our accustomed life together. Even as we each struggled with concerns for our own families and households, our own safety and incomes and professional commitments, as well as the national political situation, we also labored together to reinvent church and to master the use of technologies that we had barely heard of before this emergency. And all of us are thankful to all of you who encouraged us and were willing to try new things in new forms and continued to support our congregation with your reliable contributions. Thanks to you, we will still be a viable force for justice, connection, and compassion here in Kansas City when this pandemic year is a historical footnote. We have no super spreader events to regret. Our policies have been both safe and humane. There is something to be said for a faith that heeds the guidance of reason and the results of science, it would seem. But that does not mean that we have been somehow serenely impervious to the impact of COVID-19. As the representatives of the UU Trauma Response Ministry suggested in their recent video, this collective trauma has affected us all. Being part of a community, whether local or national, means that we do not have to become ill personally or lose a loved one of our own in order to experience the physical and mental health aspects of trauma, including its spiritual challenges. We know that human consciousness is a function of both electrical and chemical processes that happen in the brain. We know that such inherently human activities as memory, learning, creativity, and decision-making take place at the delicate intersections of networks of nerve fibers, a flow of electrical impulses and a bath of hormonal and other chemicals, a ballet of physics that generates the mind with all its perceptions, responses, and emotions, with its awareness of world and self, and its elaborate repertoire for sorting experiences into useful categories. It's actually an admirably tough system, all things considered, given the ways in which the physical box can get bashed around in the environment and the bewildering variety of experiential inputs it may run across in the course of a lifetime. But it's not ultimately invulnerable. Damage the physical stuff enough, starve it of oxygen, blast it with toxic chemicals, corrupt it with germs, shoot bullets through it, and it will cease to function. That much is certain. But you can also overwhelm that interior dance of cells and neurons and throw the whole system of mental processing out of whack by handing it such intense, painful, and disruptive threats that it just can't cope with the input. This kind of short circuit is the essence of trauma, and it has both physical and mental consequences. Traumatic events come in a variety of forms, and what is trauma to me isn't necessarily so to you. Some people, for reasons that we are only beginning to explore, are more resilient than others. But despite this diversity, each of us has a trauma threshold, a point at which our capacity to cope with what is going on around us in a rational, reflective way implodes. No one is in what we might call their right mind when they are overwhelmed with fear, pain, or loss. This awareness makes a difference when we seek to understand how moving through this pandemic may have affected each of us as individuals, as well as what it might mean collectively for our All Souls community. There are 5 principles that define what has come to be known as trauma-informed care, that enumerate how people and institutions can respond to those who have suffered traumatic events in ways that promote healing rather than increase trauma. I find it rather fascinating that each of these 5 principles resonates with the foundational beliefs and values of Unitarian Universalism. It is as if we were a faith designed to recognize and heal the scars of trauma. The first of these principles is safety, creating a system in which the participants will not be harmed or deprived of core needs or threatened with additional pain or loss. Safety is the result of 3 dynamics. First, the belief that safety matters and a stated commitment to create a safe environment. Second, a dedication by the majority of participants to safe practices. And third, a determination to hold everyone, including those in power, accountable for their behavior. In this respect, we can see that the previous administration's denial of danger and refusal to adopt safe practices in its own behavior or to require them of others exacerbated both the actual harm of the virus and the traumatic dysfunction of citizens who were needing a safe environment in which to process the crisis. By contrast, our own facilities committee and board made reasoned, evidence-based decisions with the clearly stated intention of keeping all members of our community as safe as possible. Even though it would have been comforting to be able to be together, we were all aware that everyone in charge was committed to our collective safety, and that helped all of us to respond rationally rather than out of panic. Trauma is made worse when people and systems who are supposed to nurture or protect us fail, when the structures we relied on don't work the way we thought they would. That cognitive dissonance is part of what overwhelms the system and makes it so hard to cope when we no longer know what we can trust. This brings us to the second principle of trauma-informed care, which is trustworthiness or dependability. Systems that can help those who suffer from trauma to heal, to learn, and to change must be stable and reliable, with clear and consistent boundaries and specific, achievable expectations. When the environment is arbitrary and you never know what might happen, you are always in survival mode, which is where trauma always leaves us. If you can't tell what is expected of you, or if what is expected seems completely beyond your capacity, you experience the same powerlessness that is part of trauma all over again. We heal best in an environment that is consistently courteous, respectful, compassionate, and comforting, where the rules do not change arbitrarily. This is why having a variety of state governors and local leaders issuing conflicting instructions has been particularly unhelpful for our responding to the COVID pandemic nationally in a reasoned way. The third principle is one deeply embedded in our heretical UU history, and that is choice. Having choices is the antidote to the powerlessness of the traumatic experience. When people are able to give or withhold their consent, or select aspects of their environment, or choose among tasks, their sense of self is restored, and their capacity for decision-making is reaffirmed. Too many options or too many choices in a short period of time can be overwhelming, but a consistent flow of self-determination helps any of us to feel in control of the world and of ourselves. While losing a loved one or friend to COVID is inherently a traumatic experience, the inability to choose anything about how those final days and hours would unfold and who could accompany them made those losses even more psychically overwhelming and painful to observe and to remember. Thus arises the fourth principle, which is collaboration or mutuality. As tempting as it can be for those in charge to want to fix everything for someone who has experienced a traumatic event, it is really more helpful in the long run if the survivors are involved as collaborators in whatever needs to be done. As helpless as we have all felt, and realistically have all been up against this strange virus, it has been helpful to do what we can, to sew masks, or support frontline healthcare workers, to help manage our children's virtual schooling or our company's online operations, to guide our elderly relatives to engage unfamiliar technology. Even the things we haven't done, if we understand them as a contribution to the common good, can offer some sense of control. Our online Sunday gatherings are not just something to resist and resent. They are a sacrifice we are all making to protect each other, a meaningful choice, not a random imposition. The fifth principle of trauma-informed care is empowerment. Its goal is never to create conformity or dependency, but rather to give people the tools to make their lives what they choose for them to be, and to have an impact on the world if they want to. Many of us and many others have said that we do not hope to get back to normal. What we were used to in our contemporary culture wasn't entirely life-giving, or equitable, or conducive to our collective mental health. Rather, we want to build back better, to use this disruption as an opportunity to empower ourselves and others to make wiser choices, to not return to habits that were frantic or unmindful or harmful to other people or living beings or the earth. Trauma affects all of us and those we love. It snatches away our highest human functions of reason, compassion, ingenuity, and self-awareness, narrowing the world into dangers, enemies, and sheer survival. My humanism teaches me not to expect superheroes or saviors. We must be redeemed from that hopelessness by and with the imperfect others all around us, by our own capacities and those we borrow in our need and share out of our abundance. We can get better at seeing each other through, learning how the traumatic events of our lives injure and change us, and how best to help one another stay afloat and heal. One important way to regain the selfhood that trauma robs us of is to make meaning of our pain, especially together with others. That is exactly what we want here in this church and in all the UU churches that I know, to empower each other, to take whatever pain life has handed us and whatever resilience we can muster together and change the world for the better so that it all means something in the end. That is why it matters that we as a covenant community of memory and promise take the opportunity for reflection, to recognize both our personal losses and the enormity of our collective loss over the course of this year. More than 500,000 of our fellow citizens, more than 2.5 million human souls across the globe. It is fitting, it is needful that we should pause in the urgencies of our own lives to pay a tribute of attention and respect as this year slides into the next, lest they slip away unhonored in the great river of mortality upon whose currents we are borne uneasily along. Let us remember they were not all heroes, though some were, those who cared for others knowing the risk and were caught by the odds. They were not all reckless, though some were, those who would not believe and chose not to heed. Some percentage of them would have died in any case, by accident, some other disease or catastrophe. No one's life is ever guaranteed. They did not sign up for this moment in history. They had other plans, dreams, agendas, satisfactions to enjoy, troubles to overcome, mistakes to correct. They were human, that's all, just like the rest of us. Just unlucky, extra vulnerable, wrong place, wrong time, wrong breath of air. Through a glass darkly, the scripture says, that's how we watched them go, hands pressed against windows, hearts shattered by separation before the final separation, sorrow without the grounding comfort of touch and ritual, mourning without the leavening of celebration and ceremony. They were good, generous people who gave themselves in many ways to build community. They were arrogant, selfish people who took more than they gave. The virus does not and did not distinguish. All we know for sure is that they were part of the fabric of our larger community, and now they are gone. Sooner than we thought. Sooner than they had any reason to expect, reminding us yet again that we are not running this show. 500,000 and counting, with another spike of cases ahead, and the virus throwing off exuberant variants while we scramble to understand what safety means. Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living, instructed the activist Mother Jones. We are in that fight for sure, but let's not neglect the first part. How shall we pray for these dead? All we know of them is that they were like us and not like us, random in their dying, not selected by any unifying quality. How shall we praise them, honor them, remember them in their magnificent diversity? Their only nobility is what is common to our shared humanity. They labored and suffered, rejoiced and dreamed, loved and were loved, and too soon they are gone. Vulnerable star stuff, all the risk that flesh is heir to, they were, and we are. Perhaps the 17th century poet John Donne says it best. No one is an island entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thine own or of thy friends were. Each person's death diminishes me, for I am involved in humankind. Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. 500,000 bells toll, 600,000, 700. We do not know yet what the entire toll will be. In solemn reverence, then, let us pause a moment to acknowledge these losses, personal and communal, so that we, the lucky, may not grow callous of spirit in our survival, nor surrender to guilt for what was not our doing. Rather, let us honor the memory of those no longer among us, with gratitude for what was fine in them, with mercy for what was broken in them, with regret for what they might yet have given the world, with acknowledgement that our lives are less for the loss of theirs. Let us do all that we learn to make this plague pass speedily away from our midst. Let us honor the caregivers and frontline workers who made it possible for us to endure. Let us go forward to lives of greater generosity and compassion for the sake of those cut short. And let us remember, in the midst of its terrors, the beauty of this world, which is also true. Let us remember in these fast, turbulent currents carrying us irresistibly into an unknown future, the wisdom of our newest psalm. We were born upon these fathoms here on this blue planet, sailing through starry space together. All our lives we have been voyaging upon a sea of wonder, and our goal is not safe harbor, but greater discovery. Let us be as wise as we can in danger, as honest as we can about our real losses. Let us work as kindred pilgrim souls, even as we are separated in this difficult passage. And we shall keep our vessel afloat, past the shoals of trauma, out to the deep ocean of adventure and fulfillment of the human spirit once more. Let us lift our voices together in song.
far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Dearly beloved, we are not done yet, so hold on. Sing, pray, center down. Touch only those to whom you commit your life. For a little while longer, do not yet reach out your hands. Reach out your heart, reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly in the spaces where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, even now, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live.
And the brightness of day.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts, until the time shall come when we will be together again. Thank you for being with us this morning, and thanks to all those whose virtual presence has made it possible to preserve the connections of community over this year. We hope you will join us now for a few moments of informal conversation in our Community Connection Zoom room. You can find the link in the chat here or on our All Souls website homepage. Don't forget to pick up your St. Patrick's Day Sunday Plus meal later this afternoon, and be sure to fix your clock if you haven't already. Please plan to be with us next Sunday to celebrate the spring equinox and consider the metaphors of darkness and light in balance. Meanwhile, everyone, please get your vaccine when you can. Take care, stay safe, and be well this week.